I think the two baselines that need to be addressed are energy and education. I'll just paint the energy balance equation for a second. China, I don't know if you guys have talked about this today, but China has roughly 3 terawatts of electricity production capacity. The US has 1. China, over the next 15 years, is going to 8, and the US is going to 2. So in the next 15 years, China is adding 5 Americas in terms of electricity production capacity. Not only is their cost for every unit of capacity that's being added roughly 1/10 of our cost, so it's cheaper for them to add capacity. The ultimate end product is less than 5 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're running at 15. So there's a major energy gap problem.
Today, we're sharing a conversation about rebuilding American manufacturing recorded at this week's Hill and Valley Forum in Washington, D.C. Senator Todd Young is joined by Shaun Maguire, a partner at Sequoia, and David Friedberg, the CEO of Ohalo, to discuss the massive energy gap with China, how to reform education for industrial jobs, and where strategic innovation could help the U.S. regain its competitive edge. If you're interested to hear all the talks from the forum, head to the link in the description.
Well, hello, everyone. The topic of this panel is Made in America, a new era of industrial strength. The purpose is to talk about what it looks like to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. across industries and how government and technology can do that together. This is one of the most important issues in our country. We can go down the list of sort of where we have failed in this area. 50 to 70% of lithium refining is done in China. 90% of rare earth elements are mined there. Significant percentage of our fertilizers, advanced pharmaceutical ingredients, all come from China. 80% of global solar module production comes from China. You can go down the list. This is a big focus for this administration, big focus across the aisle. And Senator Young, we have here, who's been a big champion for industrial policy. And so maybe just to start, I'll start on this side, but Shaun, we know the problem. How do you think we bring back manufacturing to the U.S.? And then we'll go down and let everyone chime on that.
Thanks for having us here, Christian. Thanks, everyone else. So I think we all view this, I think we all identify the problem, maybe think about it differently. The honest answer is a complex system, and I don't know exactly what to do, but some of the things that I think will work and are at least like pillars to build more on top of are basically whenever you have a company in a new category that goes and becomes a true dominant market leader in this new emerging category, a whole supply chain gets built around it. I think the best 2 examples of the last couple of decades are SpaceX and Tesla, where when you go intersect an emerging area and you get to kind of compound in an exponential way, it pulls the entire supply chain with you, whether that's batteries for Tesla or, metalworking for SpaceX, now all the way up to making, engines for satellites and, satellite integration, or now even making doing PCBA. Anyways, I think that one of the things we have to be doing is looking towards what are the industries that 10 years from now are going to really matter and almost be kind of newer areas. In my opinion, it's things like silicon photonics or, drone manufacturing. These are the things where like China's not so far ahead and the whole supply chain is not so rich and integrated that it's like if you take leading edge semiconductor manufacturing, it's very hard to go just catch up to it because it's moving so quickly on the leading edge and the supply chain is just so far away from us. I think we have to choose our battles and find these next very, very important areas and go win those. And I actually think sometimes when you win those, it actually helps you win the other areas as well. Like for SpaceX, they're bringing even, PCBA back to America, and that was something that had basically been gone for a couple decades. And just when you become a giant profitable company, it can subsidize, and incentivize bringing back, other tangential technologies.
And Senator Young, you've worked on this from a policy perspective. We're all relying on tech companies in the private markets in order to do this, but government can be an unlock to help make that easier. What are you seeing in regards to government's willingness to focus on industrial policy and what policies do you think actually may help drive this change and help accelerate some of the work that Tesla and SpaceX have done as examples?
Well, I came to this broader issue of trying to reshore certain tech manufacturing, hard tech manufacturing, over the course of the pandemic. I was persuaded, as reality unfolded before our eyes, that we didn't have enough semiconductor access. We hadn't prepared for contingencies, whether they're natural disasters like a pandemic or an earthquake, or geopolitical events in which our dependencies on other countries or their ability to interrupt our supply chains are taken into consideration. So I think, we should focus on those technologies, I agree, that we regard as critical to future innovation. We have to relearn, in some cases, how to manufacture certain things. I think we need to bake into the cost of our goods or be prepared to an economic security or a national security premium, just as we have for our traditional DoD investments over the years, and think a little more broadly about what national security is all about. I think in the process, there'll be tons of opportunity for our innovators, our investors, our businesses here to make new things. But first, let's go through the homework of figuring out what is essential to relocate here, then figure out how to seize the opportunity. We don't need, in my estimation, we don't need to manufacture garments in a very robust way. So we wouldn't regard that as a national security or an economic security threat. And therefore, that shouldn't be our point of emphasis. Government is bipartisan recognition now that government has a role to play in baking in that national security premium and ensuring that we have a trained workforce to work in these national security or economic security relevant areas so that we can manufacture critical components and technologies. And then way upstream, continuing to invest smartly in research will be essential. I think our private sector has done a great job of investing very heavily in research that has immediate commercial relevance. But if we want to stay in competition with the Chinese in particular and other adversaries, we need to stay ahead of them in some of these key areas.
And Dave, you care a ton about this issue. I feel like this and the debt crisis and overspending are maybe equal passions, or at least in your top 5. You also see it from a broad lens, right? Our problems here touch bio, they touch ag. They don't just touch, maybe our aerospace and defense supply chains, energy as well. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on this issue?
I think the two baselines that need to be addressed are energy and education. I'll just paint the energy balance equation for a second. China, I don't know if you guys have talked about this today, but China has roughly 3 terawatts of electricity production capacity. The US has 1. China, over the next 15 years, is going to 8, and the US is going to 2. So in the next 15 years, China is adding 5 Americas in terms of electricity production capacity. Not only is their cost for every unit of capacity that's being added roughly 1/10 of our cost, so it's cheaper for them to add capacity, the ultimate end product is less than 5 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're running at 15. So there's a major energy gap problem that the US is going to have if we intend to be competitive and sustainable from a manufacturing perspective, because this century, all manufacturing will be driven by the cost of power. And it won't be possible without the availability of power. And we already see this outsized power demand coming from data centers. Now, China's forecast, by the way, I'll also highlight, really only represents committed projects. There's a lot more that China has recently demonstrated that's going to start to add to that number, and there's going to be a reacceleration, it seems, beyond the 8 terawatt capacity that they're shooting for over the next 15 years. They have the world's first pebble bed reactor that's running. It's a Gen 4 nuclear reactor, and it works, and they're now opening multiple of them. This is a safe, cannot melt down, highly efficient, uranium-based energy production system. They're developing 170 gigawatts of power along the Yangtze and hydroelectric facilities. That's 17% of the total power capacity of the United States that they're developing along this river. They have the world's first thorium reactor. It was revealed a few weeks ago that's been running for well over a year, and they did a full life cycle replacement of this thorium reactor, of the fuel. It's running. It's a molten salt reactor. So you add those Gen 4 reactors, you add the new hydroelectric work, and they made a 1 million-ton discovery of thorium in Inner Mongolia, which gives them enough energy for 60,000 years. And thorium is 100% used as fuel, whereas uranium, we have to refine it down to 0.7%. So there's a massive energy gap that needs to be addressed. The solution in the United States is simply deregulatory. Regulatory constraints on a local, state, national level are what are keeping these projects at bay. The capital is there, the intelligence is there, the resourcing is there. So to scale up energy, it's not about solar, it's not about wind. Those might have been nice from a narrative perspective, but scalable energy production requires these next-gen systems, and we have to unlock that. On the education front, I think we've really messed up. And we've sold American kids a dream that if they go to college, they will graduate and live with greater prosperity than their parents did, and that's not true anymore. And I think a large part of the reason for this is the federal student loan program. I believe that the federal student loan program has put kids in $500 billion worth of debt that they'll never be able to get out of because there was no checks and balances, there was no market force that said whether or not what a school was charging for tuition was ultimately going to pay back for that child. So if you had a system where kids were actually forced to go out and pick good schools, and only the good schools that would ultimately generate the salaries needed for them to pay back that loans, you would have a very different set of outcomes. It's also going to be really clear from an industrial-based perspective, and because of AI, you don't need the same higher education that we operated with in the 20th century. It's not needed. Vocational programming, on-job training, the ability to use AI to leverage personalized training and tutoring to bring kids up to the level that they need to be and bring adults into the workforce so they can be productive is going to be necessary for us to build the workforce that's going to be able to work in an industrial setting. I can tell you kids today are graduating from college with $100,000 of student loan debts. They end up in $20 an hour jobs, and they say, when am I getting my promotion? What's next? And there's nowhere to go. So why would I go get a degree in art history or social whatever, come out, and go make $20 an hour and never be able to get out of this situation? At the end of the day, we need to change the education equation, and we need to rethink it, and we need to recast the American dream from education through to the workforce and explain what the American dream in the 21st century looks like. And it's going to require, I think, a radical reinvention of the narrative and of the student loan program, which I think is a big part of the bubble problem. So.
Please.
Could I just complement those thoughts? I agree about the focus on energy and education, and also think that we need more attention on the financing of higher ed, broadly defined. And in the past, I've tried to socialize an idea of improving the regulatory atmosphere for income share agreements, which leave it up to the market to assess the worthiness of particular degrees and also incentivizes those who invest in the skills of tomorrow's workforce to ensure that workers are genuinely prepared on the back end of their educational experience and they land good jobs. And so there'll be labor market efficiencies we could realize. If you have money at stake, you want to make sure those you're investing in are able to get introductions to the right firms and prepared on day one for jobs. The other thing I would add, in addition to your focus on this too, is transportation. If we don't improve our permitting for rail, for surface transportation, airports, if we don't upgrade those systems, then everything we're prepared to talk about today, the reshoring of tech manufacturing, is really just reduced to talking points. We have to be able to deliver components and products to the end user, and right now we aren't living up to our responsibilities here in Washington. I will say, I think the administration is really focused on this, and they get it. And Congress will be focused on this in coming months.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll continue our interview in a moment after a word from our sponsors. What does the future hold for business? Ask 9 experts and you'll get 10 answers. It's a bull market. It's a bear market. Rates will rise or fall. Can someone invent a crystal ball? Until then, over 41,000 businesses have future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. When you're closing the books in days and not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. If I had needed this product, it's what I'd use. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/Zen. The guide is free to you at netsuite.com/Zen. netsuite.com/Zen. So it's a new year, 2025. And one of the recurring questions I've already been receiving is, should I start my own business? Can I do it all on my own? Now more than ever, my answer is a resounding yes, with tools like today's sponsor, Shopify. It's never been easier to start pursuing your dreams. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. No coding or design skills required. They also help with the details like shipping, taxes, payments, and have social media tools that connect all your channels and create shoppable posts, allowing you to focus on the important stuff, like growing your business. What happens if you don't act now? Will you regret it? What if someone beats you to the idea? Don't kick yourself when you hear this again in a year because you didn't do anything now. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/momentofzen, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/momentofzen to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/momentofzen.
And on the energy piece, are you also seeing, obviously we talk a lot about nuclear and other sources of energy. Are there any sort of policy unlocks that you're excited about to sort of see that maybe this administration or this Congress is focused on?
Well, modular nukes, the administration has heard the same sort of thing that I have in recent years, which is as opposed to maybe just 5 or 10 years ago where there's a lot of reservations, maybe some parochial NIMBYism. People are welcoming, communities are welcoming more power, or not modular nuclear power into their communities. I don't know if that will last, but in nearly every part of my state, which hasn't always embraced these new technologies, we started and then did not complete a nuclear plant many years ago. But I think there's a general sense among the public that this is an incredibly viable path to unlocking a lot more kilowatt hours and preparing our communities for these new manufacturing jobs. So we should seize this political moment. These oftentimes don't last forever. And the administration, I think, is really focused on deregulation.
America needs to embrace a higher order of risk tolerance. This is what's happened is a stagnation has enveloped this country because of the complete loss of risk tolerance. If we were going to the moon and we said we cannot possibly consider anyone getting hurt on the process to the moon, we would have never made it to the moon. If we were going to go fight in World War II and said no one can die, we would have never gone across the ocean. The fact that we're not willing to take risk and recognize you're not going to have 100% certainty of every action you're going to take if you're in a situation that America is in like it is today, we are never going to get to where we need to be. We have to acknowledge, and the narrative has to change, which is there's going to be loss, there's going to be risk, we have to embrace it. This is what's needed of America, and it takes us, otherwise we look like Europe. And we're going to end up being completely stagnant, no innovation, and no improvement in the quality of life for the people here over time.
Well, the irony is American taxpayers are helping to foot the bill for deployments of modular nukes in Europe right now through the Development Finance Corporation. So we need to invest in the same sorts of deployments here and prioritize those deployments. I do think we're prepared to do that. It'll take some time, though. There's going to be a transition. I think most recognize that. So in all of the above approach in which we're welcoming more investment in gas, even the occasional coal generation plant makes a lot of sense in the near term.
Shaun, what are your thoughts?
Just very quickly, if you look in the KGB playbook, at least what was revealed orally in the Cold War, the number one thing is to mire your opponent in bureaucracy. And we've let that happen to us. And we have to identify that and somehow find a way out. But we've evolved. We've been the frog that got boiled in a pot, and we didn't even realize it. And we have to snap out of it very quickly.
And I'll go back to you, Shaun. One of the things that a lot of our ecosystem in the tech industry have talked about, and you've seen it, you mentioned obviously as an investor in SpaceX and with Tesla, is the role that automation will play. For us to reindustrialize, for us to bring back manufacturing capacity, it's going to look different, right? And in World War II, you had this unique dynamic where commercial enterprises were able to pivot and take their industrial capacity and scale, and then pivot, right, and apply that to the wartime efforts. Today, what does that look like, right? Because there is a key component, which is how do we bring back these jobs? How do we reskill and train these folks to go do this? Because we've lost a lot of these skill sets. But also, you can sort of, Skirt said, you can jump ahead of China if we actually just invest more in automation. And automation, like in Tesla's case, it actually does bring back jobs, right? This isn't sort of antithetical to jobs. So can you talk a little about the role automation will play in manufacturing?
For what it's worth, Friedberg started an automation company like 10 years ago. I'll give him a shout out, automating the kitchen and food preparation. I've also been passionate about automation for a long time, though. The answer is yes. I completely agree. Automation is, first of all, it's already happening in China. Like if you go look in a factory in China, the amount of human labor is going down, but the output is going up dramatically, and it's all from automation. So it doesn't require any leap of faith that this is going to happen. It just requires deregulating, having more base energy. To my first point, I think incentivizing, providing the seed conditions to help some new domestic national champions arise, like SpaceX and Tesla being examples of national champions in certain verticals. But I think we need a few national champions in next generation defense, specifically, FPV drones, other categories of drones, quantum sensors, silicon photonics, bioproduction. And I think if you let national champions thrive through deregulation and baseline energy,
and the government being a buyer.
And the government being a buyer initially to seed these things, not with tens of billions of revenue, but with that first 100 million or so of revenue, I think then the automation just follows naturally, because it's the only way to actually build things at scale in the modern world, as we're seeing even in China, which has like roughly 1/5 the labor cost that we do. And they're already automating. It's obviously going to happen here if we let it.
There is a bit of we're talking a lot about how do we bring back this capacity here. This will also look like a model where we also will rely on our allies as well. How do you think about, and whether in your companies, whether the companies you invest in, and obviously from the Hill, how do you guys think about onshoring and friendshoring? And there's this debate around the spectrum where you land there. But maybe talk a little about kind of how you guys would sort of see what this looks like, and how we'll work with our allies, and then what we need to bring back here. Maybe Senator Young to start.
I'm happy to address that. I've had to think a lot conceptually about this. The practical application almost came first with my work in semiconductors, and then the thought was, okay, should this apply to other areas, and why should it apply, so that you can sort of circumscribe your thinking. As I said earlier, you don't want to be reshoring everything or subject to those sorts of arguments. So number one, I would say friendshoring and nearshoring or onshoring, it's not a binary thing. It's a case-by-case sort of thing, depending on a particular product and what the core competencies of your friends and partners are. Number two, it requires a different mindset from firms. We are asking competitive firms to cooperate in de-risking their supply chains, so that we can our countries in which we do business and live are secure against future interruptions. It's really in competition to China and other actors who would manipulate those supply chains. You have to go through the homework of identifying whether this is an economic or national security imperative, and inconveniently, that's not a formulaic exercise. It requires some judgment, some discernment. And policymakers are going to have to get back to working with industry and other stakeholders, national security stakeholders primarily. We've got to get back to making those judgment calls rather than just allowing the market to take care of everything. Sometimes we have to establish the framework for the market. And then we need to make sure that we have not just the commercial connective tissue, but I think government can play a constructive role here as well in dividing and conquering. That is, you identify vulnerable nodes of production and distribution, and working together, you need to pair together the actors and identify who's going to make what, and by how many amounts. So that requires government to establish more nodes as opposed to fewer nodes. It's sort of counterintuitive for a lot of people, but if we're unable to produce in one country, we want to be able to access another friendly, high-trust country. Number two, we want to focus on those areas in which we're best. So I think comparative advantage across friendly and trusted countries still applies here. Number three, we need to figure out how to share capital. So let's pool our risk capital together when it comes from research down to distribution. So this becomes very complex, and it requires sometimes government to put together different leaders who would handle these different things. We've seen this in the semiconductor initiative. We saw not only incentives and grants handed out, those were the tangible things. We saw not only export controls implemented, but we've also seen our State Department, our Commerce Department, figuring out where the gaps or vulnerabilities in our supply chains were and working with our foreign counterparts to help address those in thoughtful ways. So it's going to require that in whatever areas are identified as national and economic security priorities.
And Dave?
It's a lot, I know.
What do you think about the friendshoring versus onshoring debate, and as a founder and across different industries that you see? Obviously it will depend on the industry, but I'm curious some of your thoughts.
Look, it's necessary, particularly in the near term. We have to have facilities that we can access with labor pool that's trained ex-US, and we need to allow partners to build, develop, and operate in the US. So I don't know how we get away with that. There's no, I think, immediate nationalist outcome that's going to be successful. Yeah. So we've got to figure out who our friends are. And America needs to figure out what are we willing to live with. And we've got to, I think, be very aligned very quickly, given the objectives we have.
And maybe just to finish, all three of you, and we can start with Shaun and then go down. If you all had a magic wand and you can wave it and there'd be one U.S. policy that you could change, or one U.S. policy that you would implement to bring back manufacturing, what would it be? And this is a broad range of things. A lot of conversations we've had have been around trade schools. They've been around nuclear regulation, deregulation. I'm curious, what you guys sort of would suggest and encourage us to focus on. Maybe Shaun to start.
I think, so Friedberg will probably say energy, so I'll let him say that one. There's probably 10 different areas where I would put about $10 billion of seed capital in to get these nascent industries going. FPV drones would be one. I'm investing in a company called Neros, and I see it firsthand how important the initial revenue is. And I mentioned a couple others, but I think that on the order of $10 billion, you can get the flywheel going on new industries. To catch up to leading edge fab would be like $1 trillion. I think that I would focus my bets on the smaller next gen industries.
Dave?
I mean, energy is too obvious, so maybe I'll just say the education one. I'd take the federal student loan funding, cut it by some number, and whatever's left, I would put it, make it only available to qualified vocational and training programs that actually are tied to ultimately a corporate employer that's going to bring folks into the workforce. So really making sure that we're giving Americans an opportunity to develop their careers, have a transition from higher education, from their high school education into the workforce in a way that's going to be meaningfully beneficial and also is going to have real payback for them, rather than con them and trick them into thinking that there's some magical rainbow that they're going to climb over and find a pot of gold on the other side and we've got to break that, and we've got to be really clear about where the gold really is, and reassess how we're doing education funding in this country.
Senator, maybe just to wrap us up.
Sure. My change would be conceptual. It would be correcting this temptation, this tendency to try and reshore everything, and instead focus on truly strategic national security or economic security priorities when we think about reshoring. If you do that, if you go through the hard work of analysis, even if you occasionally get it wrong, on the front end, it's going to save a lot of money. It's going to lead to a lot more consumer value, and it's going to really go further, I think, in the long run to advance our national security than if you're trying to reshore everything, which is adopting the Chinese model, not harnessing the best of our own model, working with our closest partners and allies.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Every time I hop on the 101 freeway in SF, I look up at the various tech billboards and think, damn, turpentine should definitely be up there. And I bet I'm not alone. In a world of endless scrolling and ad blockers, sometimes the most powerful way to reach people is in the real world. That's where AdQuick comes in. The easiest way to book out-of-home ads, like billboards, vehicle wraps, and airport displays. The same way you would order an Uber. Started by Instacart alums, AdQuick was born from their own personal struggles to book and measure ad success. AdQuick's audience targeting, campaign management, and analytics bring the precision and efficiency of digital to the real world. Ready to get your brand the attention it deserves? Visit adquick.com today to start reaching your customers in the real world. Again, that's adquick.com. Hey everyone, Eric here. In this environment, founders need to become profitable faster and do more with smaller teams, especially when it comes to engineering. That's why Sean Lenihan started Squad, a specialized global talent firm for top engineers that will seamlessly integrate with your org. Squad offers rigorously vetted top 1% talent that will actually work hard for you every day. Their engineers work in your time zone, follow your processes, and use your tools. Squad has front-end engineers excelling in TypeScript, React, and Next.js ready to onboard to your team today. For backend, Squad engineers are experts at Node.js, Python, Java, and a range of other languages and frameworks. While it may cost more than the freelancer on Upwork, billing you for 40 hours, but working only 2, Squad offers premium quality at a fraction of the typical cost, without the headache of assessing for skills and culture fit. Squad takes care of sourcing, legal compliance, and local HR for global talent. Increase your velocity without amping up burn. Visit choosesquad.com and mention turpentine to skip the waitlist. Hey everyone, Eric here. At Turpentine, we're building the first media outlet for tech people by tech people. We're the network behind the show you're listening to right now. We have a slate of hit shows across a range of topics and industries, from our AI and investing cluster of podcasts to shows that drive the conversation in tech with the most interesting thinkers, founders, investors, and influencers, like Econ 102 with Noah Smith. We're launching new shows every week, and we're looking for industry-leading sponsors.